Welcome to Explore, Explain, Highlights. In this Highlights package, we'll be looking at Season 1, Episode 4, with our guest, Nadieh Bremer, discussing the project Alice, Depth Circles.
They had seen another one of my projects that I did for data sketches called Royal Constellations, in which I visualized the family tree of 3,000 people connected to European royal families. And they thought that their data set would fit that particular kind of setup of how the abstract structure was of that visualization, that it would fit their data perfectly. So they reached out to me, asked me, like, if we send you our data set, do you also think that this would work well? And if yes, would you actually create a version for us? I held a first sort of client call during which they really guided me through the data set that they had. They really showed me, like, this is what there is, and this is the underlying variables that you'll have, and this is the things. And the way they explained it, I did feel that using at least the same abstract form as the Royal Constellations project was actually a good way to start. It might actually work, which is true. I don't often have that because data sets are always different. But I thought it could be a good place to at least start from. But I did also tell them that every data set is different, so probably we'll need to update some things. I mean, even disregarding any kind of client style guides that there were. But I guess in that sense, it was. I did really just keep that as the sort of starting off point. Yes, actually, I felt that throughout the project progressing, they felt that more and more. It's like they came to me with the start with the idea that, oh, we have this data set, we think this will work, can you just merge the two? But once the project progressed and I showed them, well, eventually, not really a spoiler, but it didn't actually work for that. And I started explaining other things and creating new versions. At every point, they were more and more like, okay, so we trust what you're doing and we agree with that. I always have a very back and forth kind of relationship with the client. I make, well, not teeny tiny, but I make like medium changes and then I immediately send it back to them and ask, like, this is where it's going right now. Is it still in the right direction for you as well? So that's almost natural to me. But here it was really more of a, oh, we like what you're doing, or here's the answer to this particular question that you had, and then that's kind of how that progressed. This was actually a tricky one because there were two types of personas that it needed to be created for. It was actually funny how they phrased that part. Let me see. I actually made a screenshot of that so I could read it. So they said to me, like, we want you to create this visualization so we can use it for management purposes. So is their system running well? How are the dependencies of the different services? Is there metadata available? So really to help their internal team understand the system on a really detailed basis. But then they said, well, we also want to use the same visualization for marketing purposes and put it on our main website. So it should be in line with their brand and a general audience. Maybe they shouldn't be able to get what it actually shows, but there should be some sort of visual appeal to it that makes people want to look at it. For me, it was always most important to have it be like an effective visualization for the people actually working with it. And then I felt that once, in more in terms of the visual form, I felt like if I have the abstract like data encoding that is working well to reveal the insights, then I'll try and use the design, so more subtle things that maybe aren't necessarily having to do anything with the data, but things like adding a glow or the use of color. I will use that to try and make it more visually appealing. So it was really driven by the former, and then seeing after I got that working, how to make that marketing side work as well. Yes, they had a very nicely created style guide, which was interesting to see on the. Usually, I quickly go to the brand colors slide, and here that was just black, white, and red.
Which
well,
that limits things, I guess. But I suppose it's nice at least up front to have that sense of, okay, here are the boundaries, and I'll work,
Yes.
do my best within there.
I started out with like a rainbow of colors, one color for each of the different domains. But once the design sort of progressed and I came upon this sort of concept of the circle and the depth circle, I saw that actually I didn't, now that every domain was so clearly in its own sort of part of the circle, I didn't need all those colors anymore. And that made it possible to really go back to that black and white and make the red really stand out. I did need that extra color, that blue, which is not in the Klein's brand guidelines, but they were okay with it. I guess also because it's, I couldn't make it red because then it wouldn't stand out because, from the field services. And like I said, it happens so few. Yeah, it doesn't happen a lot, so it's not a color that you would often see.
So yeah.
So this was in April, so that was a few months later, and they say, we've been using your visual for more than 3 months in production, and it has become an integral part of our team. All of my team members have it open on one of their screens all the time. So that was great. And then they also said, he goes on, but something else that I really enjoyed that he said is and what made this different than our other outsourced jobs is that you went through the process of coming up with a visual that works instead of implementing a visual we had in mind. So implementing a solution is completely different than coming up with a solution, and you help with the latter. So that was,
That's
I
very
was
nice.
really happy with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this Explore, Explain highlights episode. As always, the full episode is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We hope to see you again soon on another episode of Explore, Explain.